All right, let's bring in Ivana Stradner if we can, a Russia Program Fellow at the Foundation for Defense for Democracies, and Ryan Macbeth is an open source intelligence analyst. Thank you both for coming on. I do appreciate that. Ivana, if I can, starting with you just on this here. Clearly, Zelenskyy making another appearance there at the White House. We'll see President Trump, Zelenskyy together. This is right after a phone call with President Putin and a potential summit in Hungary with Putin. That's still being discussed in Budapest. But talk to us about your expectations moving forward. Will there be anything substantial to come from this?
I actually think that Putin is not ready to strike a peace. He does not want to peace in the long run. What he wants right now is to buy more time and to reposition his military and then to continue with his ambition. So I do believe that this is going to be another meeting in Budapest where Putin is just going to try to convince Trump that maybe a short ceasefire can accomplish his objectives. Meanwhile, President Zelenskyy is meeting President Trump, and he's going to ask for Tomahawk. So Ukraine actually really needs long-range missiles, for example, ATACMS, because it's really past time to put Russia on the defensive. Yesterday, Russia was complaining about the U.S. Delivering long-range missiles, believing that that's not going to change things on the battlefield. But the bad news for Russia is that Putin is really not aware that Russia is not performing well on the battlefield. He's probably misinformed by his generals who always try to appease him and tell him things that he wants to hear. And my last point is, we also have to understand that for Putin, this is the question of everything or nothing. These negotiations are not going to be easy because there is no middle ground, as Putin is betting everything on this quest.
Sure.
And having said that, let's also not forget that Putin is also waging a hybrid war against the West and NATO already.
Interesting perspective there. Ryan, I wanted to ask you about just the presence, the discussion of these Tomahawk weapons here and the missiles being used, because it was just earlier this week that we had heard it floating around being a possibility here. And now by the end of the week, we learned, oh, Putin's going to pick up the phone and actually talk to Trump. What is it about the threat of this missile that potentially has Putin worried?
Well, the main issue with the Tomahawk missile for Putin is that these things can be launched from anywhere. Now, the Tomahawk is traditionally a naval-launched weapon, and kind of like Pimp My Ride, Exhibit essentially took 4 Tomahawk missiles, stuffed them in a 40-foot shipping container, and said, hey, I hear you like missile trucks, so we put a missile on your truck. So now you can get a truck with a 40-foot shipping container loaded with 4 Tomahawk missiles that can drive anywhere in Ukraine and launch from anywhere. This is a major, major threat to Russia. And it's really brilliant what President Trump did here, because he is holding a stick in one hand and holding a carrot out in the other, because it's going to take a couple of months to get people trained up on how to use these weapons systems.
Right, and obviously to Emma's point there, you're hearing the phone ring from Vladimir Putin after the Tomahawk missile was mentioned, but there was another missile that was already being used, donated by the UK. It is the Storm Shadow missile. Ryan, if I could stay with you just on this point, you see obviously the range of 155 miles, the speed very fast, obviously 728 miles per hour. Can you talk about a little the difference, if you can, between the Tomahawk missile, the Storm Shadow? It appears that, again, the phone call happened after the discussion about a Tomahawk missile, not necessarily the Storm Shadow. What is the difference?
Well, the major difference is that the Tomahawk can be placed in a shipping container and fired from land. The Storm Shadow missile is an air-launched weapon, and right now Ukraine only has one platform that can launch that particular missile, and that is the Su-24. Ukraine doesn't have a lot of those. I believe around 12 Cold War era Su-24s that you can strap this thing to, because it is so heavy. So the major difference here is that when Ukraine fires a Storm Shadow missile, Russia has an idea of where it's coming from because it knows where those aircraft are based. But a Tomahawk missile in a shipping container can be anywhere in the country.
Well, President Trump was asked if Putin had attempted to dissuade him from sending those tomahawks. Here's what he had to say.
What do you think he's going to say? Please sell tomahawks? Is he going to say, please sell those tomahawks? I really appreciate it. I did actually say, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand tomahawks to your opposition? I did say that to him. I said it just that way. He didn't like the idea.
Ivana, what does that tell you maybe about where things stand right now between Putin and Trump?
I think President Trump is seeing through Putin's games, and he gave Putin multiple chances to sit on a table and negotiate. But I think Trump is becoming tired of his promises that Putin is not willing to deliver. So, for example, what happened with Alaska with the red carpet, but B-2 above Putin's head was exactly the right approach. Peace through strength. So that's something what I'm hoping for in Budapest as well, in terms of peace through strength, giving, as you mentioned, carrots, but also sticks to Putin. And my last point is, let's also not put Putin on a pedestal. People in the U.S. love to think that Putin is a master strategist. Let's not forget that he was also a second-rate KGB guy back during the Cold War.
All right, we'll leave it on that point with Ivana Stradner. Thank you so much. Ryan Macbeth on those missiles. Thank you so much. We do appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.